Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us for our second edition of our series for the FME World Fair partners presentations. Uh, for those of you that don't know me, my name's RabbitMQ. I'm the country manager for 1Spatial Australia, and I'm going to give you a bit of a run through on what 1Spatial is about, and then we'll hand it over to our customer stories today, as well as going through some of the hot tips from our technical team. I'll turn off my camera for the moment just to save some bandwidth. And just to give you a run through on 1Spatial, we are an international company with offices all around the world. Our head office is based in Cambridge in the UK, and we have offices in Ireland, Belgium, France, Tunisia, US of A, and in Australia. And within Australia, we have offices, head office in Sydney and office in Melbourne, as well as an office in Canberra. We have been in business for over 50 years, providing innovation and development in the geospatial arena. Our technologies are quite varied insofar as we partner with a number of key partners, and in particular, we partner with Safe Software, and Safe Software are the people organising this World Fair, and we're very proud to be a part of it. As you can see, we work in a number of key industry areas, such as government, utilities, transport, mining, and a variety of other companies and disciplines. We can see here some of our customers: Geoscape, Endeavour Energy, BHP, construction firms such as Asiona, John Hollands, and local government, Brisbane City Council, and state governments, Land Services South Australia, DELP in Victoria, New South Wales Spatial Services. And of particular, today we'll be hearing from Yarra Valley Water, from Matt Okowski, who's going to talk about a project that he has done with FME. Who are we? A software solution provider and a global expert in managing location and geospatial data. We are striving to make the world safer, smarter, and more sustainable for the future. We help our customers to unlock the value of their data to create a smarter world. We deliver powerful data solutions and applications on-premise, mobile, and in the cloud. We are a customer-centric business. We deliver solutions that address our customers' needs, and we do this through collaboration with the people involved. As you would have seen through the video clip, we have a suite, the 1Spatial Management Suite, as well as the FME product range, which you will hear more about as today goes on. I'd like to now take an opportunity to introduce the 1Spatial team here in Australia. Andrew Bashfield, our sales manager. Simon Laird is our services lead. Emma Yates, our marketing manager. Tom Farrington, a senior consultant and our head trainer. Daniela White, sales, and also coordinates and helps with the training program. Michael Studdard, sales consultant. Priyantha Palagama, our senior consultant and also manages our support center. Sam McDonald, senior consultant, and Ashish Mahandahar, a senior consultant with 1Spatial. And again, myself, RabbitMQ, as the country manager. Today, our attractions for we're going to go through some circus tricks, juggling your data challenges. We're going to have a message from Adi Bakatari from SAFE. We're also going to have a presentation, as I mentioned, from Matt Okowski from Yarra Valley Water. And our technical team are going to go through some of the hot features of 2021. On that, I'll just take this opportunity to ask you, if you do have any questions, go to the chat box and type your questions in there through the presentations, and we will have a look at those questions and endeavour to answer them. At the end of the presentations, we will invite you to answer or ask questions verbally, but by putting your hand up, and then we can unmute you and you can ask the questions directly. On that, I would like to now take the opportunity to introduce Artie, who is our channel manager for the APAC region. And Artie will give us a bit of a run through on SAFE. Welcome, Artie.
Thanks, Andre, and good afternoon, everyone. Pleasure to virtually meet you all. Hope you're enjoying the FME World Fair, and we hope that as you continue to go through the World Fair presentations that 1Spatial has, and the ones that Safe Software has, you get to make your data dreams come true with FME. So as Andre mentioned, my name's Artie, and I have the pleasure of working with our partners in the APAC region, and I work with the 1Spatial team very closely. Not sure why it's not going to the next screen. Oh, there we go. There we go. So today we're going to do a high-level overview of the FME platform, and we're going to also just do a high-level overview of who we are at Safe Software. For those who might be new to FME, we definitely want to introduce you to why we are the best platform when it comes to solving your data and application integration challenges. So with that being said, there we go. So this is a common challenge that we see amongst many organizations, and the challenge is not just collecting the data, but also combining and transforming this data and integrating it properly, so the data is able to be used and consumed by decision makers and by the business users in a simple and quick fashion. A lot of times different departments will go and purchase the best application that they need for their own use. The GIS department will purchase something like Azure. Permitting department might have something like CityWorks in there for their asset management as well, while SAP is handling all the finances. And of course, these three by themselves don't always communicate with one another, and that can create a lot of challenges with getting information in and out of these systems. And that's where FME comes in. We are a enterprise data and application integration platform, and our goal is to connect all the data and applications that the organization has to allow the business users to again get information and access to the data that they need in order to make the best decision for their business, and in order to increase the integrity of their data. As one of the common challenges that we've seen is a lot of companies are not trusting the data because it's coming from multiple different sources and it's not being cleansed or prepared properly for consumption at all. Our mission at Safe Software is very simple. Our mission is to help you maximize the value of your data, no matter where it's stored, no matter who needs access to that data, and no matter where that data is really coming from. We're not just platform agnostic, but we're also a no-code and a low-code environment. Everything that you see with FME does not require the knowledge of any sort of coding or scripting language. And in fact, out of the box, we have a library of transformers and readers and writers in order to help you achieve the data conversion and translations you need without any, again, coding or scripting. A little bit of overview of who we are here at Safe Software. We've been around for over 26 years now, I believe, 27 years. We're based out of Surrey, British Columbia, here in Canada, and we've been head office there since 1993. We started out back in 1993 when there were some government organizations in our province that were going through some data challenges, and our two co-founders, Don and Dale, worked very closely on those projects, and they saw the vision and the need for FME in the broader market, and that's where FME and Safe Software was born. Today, we have the extreme pleasure of working with over 10,000 organizations worldwide. We are in over 128 different countries, with Australia, of course, being one of those. And as a software vendor, we don't provide any sort of professional services or local support or local pricing. Instead, we rely on a network of partners in order to not just act as an extension of our business, to provide you with local support, local training, custom training, and local pricing, but also to be there hand in hand in order to help you succeed within your projects and your uses of FME. And we have a very great relationship with 1Spatial, and it's partners like this that allow us to continue to expand our reach in new markets and new industries. This is a high-level overview of the FME platform. Again, FME does not require the knowledge or any sort of scripting or coding at all. You are able to customize and extend the capabilities of FME with custom codes if you prefer, using either C++, R, or Python, any other scripting language. But out of the box, it's not necessary. And the platform journey always starts off on the far left with FME Desktop. This is where you go and build and run your workflows when it comes to either converting, translating, or migrating data. And once you want to get into automating those workflows, either through a event-based trigger or some sort of a database trigger, that's where FME Server comes in from an automation perspective. Again, both of these are GUI-based drag and drop. No coding or scripting is required to build and run the workflows, or even to automate it. And we're very, again, platform agnostic as far as how you're able to, get messages from an automation perspective with FME Server, whether that's sent to you via email or a SMS, or even on Microsoft Teams or Slack. We can provide all those notifications. For customers and clients that aren't interested in leveraging a on-premise solution like FME Desktop and FME Server, and they want a hosted version of FME Server to be able to not worry about the infrastructure side, we also have FME Cloud available. FME Cloud is FME Server, except it's hosted on our AWS infrastructure here at SAFE. Otherwise, again, with FME Desktop and FME Server, you're more than welcome to deploy that in any infrastructure that you please: Google Cloud, Alibaba, Azure, or AWS. And of course, as the power and the need for mobile is continuously growing within our world, we're putting a lot of focus on FME Mobile as well. And we've built a lot of cool applications using FME AR with FME Mobile too. And right now, I believe it's only available on iOS, but we are definitely working on an Android app as well. We love showing this graph because it truly talks about how we've expanded the capabilities of FME throughout the years. When we first started back in 1993, it was a lot of CAD to GIS that was being done. And as our organization and as FME started to grow, we realized that the need for FME is growing in other areas besides GIS and CAD. So that's where the support for databases start to come in. That's where the support for data types like big cloud or cloud or big data also start to come in. And we're moving into the world of indoor mapping. We have a wonderful relationship with Apple on the indoor mapping side. And of course, as I mentioned, we're always forward looking. So the world of augmented reality, artificial intelligence, and virtual reality is something that's very close to us, and we're keeping a close eye on. So this graph, we're hoping that shows you that we can work with any data type and any data source in order to, again, give you the power in consuming your data in its truest fashion. Safe Software was recognized by Gartner on the Magic Quadrant for data integration tools earlier or late last year. We're very proud of this because it not only talks about the enterprise capabilities of FME, but also our niche focus of being the best platform for supporting your spatial data integration as well. So while FME is fantastic at doing the spatial data integration, we can also do the non-spatial side in order to give the customers a tier 1 platform to leverage within their organization, and a platform that will never that they'll never grow out of, and a platform that will continuously scale with them as their business needs change over time. We have the pleasure of working with some of the most exciting technology partners globally. We're partners with Azure, we're partners with Microsoft, and partners with companies like IBM and Google. Very recently, we've also formed a partnership on the bottom left, as you'll see, with a company called Snowflake. They are very big on the cloud database side, and we've built a native reader and writer to Snowflake for FME as well. As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, our deployment options are data agnostic, so it doesn't matter what type of deployment option you're looking for when it comes to FME, whether it's on Windows, Mac, Linux, Docker, Kubernetes. You're more than welcome to deploy FME in any of those and any other ones that you choose. And again, of course, for customers that don't want to worry about the infrastructure side, when it comes to FME server, we also have FME Cloud available, which again is FME server, but hosted on Safe Software's AWS infrastructure. You can also find and deploy FME in the cloud marketplaces with Google and Microsoft Azure. These are both on a bring your own license perspective. So if you currently don't have an FME license, I highly encourage, and you're interested to deploy FME in your Google Cloud or Microsoft Azure Marketplace, I highly encourage you to reach out to the team over at 1Spatial and get the license, and the deployment of it on your virtual machine is super easy and super straightforward. And as always, if you're looking for a free trial of FME, please visit us at safe.com/trial. We have trials of FME desktop and FME server available, and the full FME platform, which is FME server, FME desktop and server. And the trial can always be extended on a needed basis as well. And definitely work with the team at 1Spatial to acquire this trial. And if there are extensions needed, we're more than happy to provide it. And with that being said, I'll pass it back to the 1Spatial team. And thank you everyone for really including me on this presentation, and really hope you enjoy the rest of the fair.
Thank you, Artie. Thank you again for taking the time to be with us. And for those of you that are interested, we look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow. So I will now like to introduce our first presenter, Matt Okowski, Manager for Programs and Renewable Works at Yarra Valley Water. I don't think I'm going to say too much more. I'll let Matt run through the project on what has been done with FME. Welcome, Matt, and you should be able to have control of the mouse to run through your presentation.
Thanks, Andre. Yep, got control. Control. Yeah, thanks very much, Andre, and thank you for having me. So yeah, my name's Matt Okowski, and up until recently, I was actually the manager of what's known as the Asset and Network Data Systems team at Yarra Valley Water. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview presentation on the work we've done modernising our development industry translator. Talk to you a little bit about the challenges we face as an organisation and the drivers that spurred us to look at revamping this. Talk about some of the benefits, give you a short little video of how the application or the program works, and then just wrap it up by covering off the benefits and where I kind of see the future state of this going. All right, so what's the challenge we face as an organisation? So at Yarra Valley Water, similar to other utilities, particularly water utilities, I imagine, the biggest challenge we face is how we go about managing the level of change and development going out in the industry, and how we go about capturing that capturing the change in the real world within our spatial and asset information systems to ensure that we're able to use the most effective information to plan accurately and have the least amount of impact on our customers. So basically, it's about how we manage that churn in the real world, and how we do that in the quickest and easiest way. It looks like my slides are a little bit cut off, so apologies for that. But just to give you a bit of context in terms of the workloads we go through. So at Yarra Valley Water, we go through about 35 as constructed development or greenfield jobs per month. And they generally consist of water, soil, and more we're seeing non-drinkable water in there. And they range in size from anything from a small 30-lot job to quite a large 100-lot plus job. Just to put that in a bit of perspective, so an average job about 50, 60 lots usually takes anywhere from about half a day to up to a day per service. So that means each land development job could take anywhere from 1.5 to up to 3 days work for the team to do. And that's where we've seen the big benefit of revamping the development industry translator, because it's allowed us to gain a lot of efficiencies and improvements and remove a lot of that manual work that we've previously had to do. Overall, we update about anywhere from 20 kilometers of water main, about 10 kilometers of sewer main, and 6 or 7 kilometers of non-drinkable water each month, just through this as constructed process. So there's a fair bit of work that goes involved in that. And just below, and a bit of it is cut off, so apologies, but yeah, we go through a whole lot of other work that I'm not really going to talk to. Is just to give you a bit of context of how much volume we go through as an organization. So where do I fit into this, or where did I fit into this? So, like I said, I previously managed what was known as the Asset and Network Data Systems team. And the function of that team is basically to maintain the day-to-day operations of our asset management systems, which is the GIS, Maxwell, and SCADA systems. It is quite a large team at Yarra Valley Water. There's 15 in total, but for the context of asset management, data management, we have 6 specialists whose function is to basically look at updating, maintaining, and importing new information into the system as it gets constructed in the field. That's their full-time job, Monday to Friday. I also have, we have, as an organization, we have one data administrator overarching them, and his function is more kind of to set the standards, look at ensuring that we're meeting the data we provided meets our requirements, that we're displaying that information correctly, and just do a whole lot of data QA verifications, cartographic analysis, things of that nature. So where did this journey begin for us? So it's probably been a long time coming in the works, but probably about 3+ years ago, the organizations went through a bit of a fundamental shift on how it views information and the importance of information. Previously, information was probably seen as just something we have, and you use it when you've got it. Just keep it going. But we've really started to view information, the data, particularly our asset information, as just as critical as the actual physical assets in the ground. The pipes, the valves, the fittings, whatnot. And this is something that's been really driven by our senior management, and they've really pushed back on, why it's critical for us to do. And what that has meant is that it's given us the ability to invest more in our systems, in our processes, but also provide me within the organization the ability to push back and ensure that those standards are adhered to and that we are maintaining those standards. And it challenged that whole notion of garbage in, garbage out. And it used to be, near enough is good enough. And we've really challenged those notions, and really took in a bit more of a hard line to ensure that we are getting the right information for what we need. And the reason for that is because our asset management systems alone are critical, but our asset management systems are integrated with all throughout the entire organization. They link to our billing, they link to our programs, they link to our customer platform, our comms, everything throughout the organization. And those any issues we have in that data just are magnified down the road within these other within the other applications. And below, I just got a couple of examples. So our asset management system, the data there drives all our programmed and planned reactive work. So it basically determines which assets we need to replace ahead of time, so that, if that information is correct, we could potentially be replacing assets that don't need to or aren't at their end of life. Or worse, we wouldn't be replacing assets that need to be replaced and directly impacting our customers. It drives our rebate and comms platform. So when there are works in the field, or when we are planning things, it identifies which customers are going to be impacted, who we need to notify, what timeframes they're notified. It drives the rebates. We have really strict KPIs on how long we can shut a customer's water off per type of work. If it exceeds that, we need to know which customers are impacted so we can rebate those customers. And then, things like our land development and works applications. So, having the knowledge of exactly where our assets are is critical, so that when customers are looking at, building, subdividing, building swimming pools, and they submit those applications, that we can actually give them correct information in terms of, are they building the right spot? Is this going to impact us or not? seem to have lost control, Andre. I can't move to the next slide. Oh, there we go. So what is the Development Industry Translator, or the DIT? So in short, the Development Industry Translator is an FME-based application that transforms the data provided to us by external contractors and developers into a format that can be absorbed directly into our GIS. So we engaged with 1Spatial, or partnered up with 1Spatial to modernize our Development Industry Translator, and that was probably about a year and a half ago, I'd say. And we've had a great success with the new application. We developed it obviously on an FME server, and that was for a number of reasons we went down that path. When we were looking at, what application or how we're going to do this, FME was a clear standout in particularly its ability to transform information and data, particularly spatial information, which was critical to us. One of the reason I really love this application, the way it's done, is that it's easy to build upon and modify. And that was really critical to us, that we're able to continuously update and develop this application as we develop new rules, as we develop new validations and verifications, that we can build them into the application. And by doing so, we remove a lot of that kind of manual work that the teams previously had to do. And that allows us to focus on the value add work, which ultimately gives us a better outcome for the customers. And lastly, I think one of the key benefits of this, and it may seem like a bit of a non-issue, but we have developed this with a very simplified front end. And what that basically means is it goes on to removing any human errors that could have been generated during the translation process. In the bottom right there, you can kind of see a bit of a diagram, and I think that's a diagram of what the water translation looks like. And you can see it can look a little bit convoluted, but it is actually quite simple. And we have a number of specialists who become quite familiar with FME within the organization. They're able to modify and build upon that existing platform, I suppose. And that's probably one of the key things that we've done with this FME program, is that what we've delivered has not been the same program. We're continuously revamping it, reviewing it. How do we build on it? How do we build these new validation rules? How do we build these new verification rules to take away that manual import? And just lastly, just on that, I just really call out that we built this new translator, or modernized our translator, but it still maintains the WIT standards. So it still has the same, it still accepts the same formats and that developers have to adhere to in terms of how we need that data, what formats that data is to be provided to us, both spatial and attribute, and also how that data links together. Oh, here we go. So now I've just got a bit of a short video to show you how the translator itself works. So where we're at this stage is the developers have submitted the job into our easy access platform, or land development platform. The project managers have reviewed that information, has passed it on. There's something for us to action the team. So I'm going to hit play there. Sorry, Andre, are you able to hit play for me there? Let's just cut out the button for me there. Yep, perfect. So what this is a sewer job, and you can select whether it's sewer water or recycled water. The user inputs a number of job details, the description, job name, reference. Select the developer responsible for the job. Looks like the video might have paused. Yep, so they select the developer for the job. They update some key information like the warranty expiry date, whether the job is boundary trapped. They input which coordinate system the file came through and what file format it is in, and that's governed by the WIT standards. And then they just copy the actual file into the application, selecting the spatial element and translate the file. So this can take a minute or two, depending on the size of the job and the quality of the job, but we then get this output file. And what this does is this provides us an output summary of the graphic errors, and which you can see in this case, there's a number of graphical errors associated with this job. And if you scroll down, it also has the attribute errors, which is coming up there, and any attribute errors associated with the job that the developers submitted to us. It then provides a nice little output file or feature counter to let us know what was incorporated into it. So in this case, you have access points, sewer branches, pipes, and it also identifies which tables inside our database it's going to be updating, and provides an output location file. Now from here, it's up to the user to determine what's been done. Generally, we have a rule of thumb in the team or in the organization that if a job takes more than 10 minutes for us to resolve, then we reject it and pass it back to the developers. If we do pass it back to the developers, we pass back with this when we give them an explanation of what failed. The developer then resubmits the process and the whole thing kicks over again. 9 times out of 10, we would very rarely have a developer who's failed a job, resubmitted it, and failed again, because we've got this relationship with them. We've given them the information. They're able to quite easily rectify any issues. If the information's passed, then great, fantastic, moves on to the next step. Yeah. Got that replaying. Yeah, fantastic. So what are the real benefits that we've gotten out of this application? So, I mean, first and foremost, the biggest benefit we've gotten is that this has allowed us to achieve better outcomes for our customers. That's what we're here for. That's what the organization is about. That's our driving factor. It's done that in a number of key ways, though. I guess the first and foremost, as you can see, it is quite simple and easy to use, particularly that front end. That output report, while it may have looked quite complicated and convoluted, once you've seen a few of it, it is quite simple, and you get a real feel for what that report is telling you and what fixes need to be done in it. Compared to our previous output reports, it's chalk and cheese, almost night and day. So it has given the team a lot more confidence and a lot more ability just to sift through the information really easily. Like I said, the biggest advantage though it has given us is that rule-based validation system. And that's been critical for us as an organization, because what it has done for us is it's allowed us to take a lot of the manual work that we've done previously, a lot of the bums in seat kind of role, and we've been able to automate as much of it as possible, and we continuously do so. I think the key thing about this is that this hasn't been just something that we develop with 1Spatial and sits on the shelf and we just use it. This is something that we're constantly reviewing, constantly updating. The team is constantly working with our development specialists, our FME specialists, to look at what new changes we can do, what are their pain points, how we can incorporate them into the translation process, because the more we can automate, the better outcomes we get ultimately. And that kind of ties into the next bit. It's that ability to modify and build onto the application, and a key part of that is also the ability to change what's happening in the real world, and rectify any new and represent any new changes to materials, methodologies, technologies. That's something that's generally typically been a pain point, as obviously the world continues to spin, new things come out. Previously, we've always been lumped with, and we've never had the ability to update those new materials, methodologies into our system. And what that means is that we've always typically had to do it manually once the translation's inside our GIS, and that opened the door to a lot of errors, whether that be typing human errors or whatnot. Having the ability to incorporate those new materials methodologies into the translator means that we're able to automate the code list updates, provide them back to developers, and the developers just use these new code lists when they use these new materials and technologies, and that's been a real win for us as an organization. In terms of where I see this in the future state, so my ultimate end goal, and something I've driven with the organization, is that ultimately I would like to pull this entire function out of our hands internally, provide to our developers and contracted partners, so they can almost self-service their own platform. And what that means is that basically they'll be able to manage their data, review that information, see what errors are in it before they submit the job, which means that they'll be able to rectify any issues ahead of time or earlier on in the process, which means that we will essentially move through the process a lot quicker, which means we ultimately, again, better outcome for our customers and faster outcomes for our customers. As a team, that means that our function goes from that verification more to a integration and input side, which means we can also focus more on the value-add work internally, and focus on probably other areas where we've got issues that we can support the organization with. I think that's it for me. So if you have any questions, please yell out. My contact details are there. I'm more than happy to have a chat to you. We're all about sharing. I'm even able to put you in touch with our specialists that actually support the FME application too. Thank you very much. Back to you, Andre.
Thank you, Matt. That was brilliant. Thank you very much. Now, I do have a question here with regard to, you mentioned about the failure rate. If a developer submitted, they would have a situation that you would send it back to them, and it was very rare for them to fail the second time round. But my question's more about, in your old system that you had prior to implementing this new system, were you able to measure how that went as far as failure rate was concerned in comparison to this new system?
Yep. Yeah, good question. So we never really had a formal way to measure it. It was more what we saw gone through emails and going back. Look, I'd say we definitely did have a higher failure rate on resubmissions. And the reason for that is that we would never have the log files to supply back to them, or they'd be so convoluted, the previous ones, that, you know, unless you've been looking at these things for 10 plus years, you wouldn't understand what you were looking at. So the reason I attribute part of that increased pass rate is the fact that we're able to provide them with more information. We get that out of that log file. Like I said, it may have looked a little bit convoluted in the video, but once you use it, and if you know what you're looking for, it becomes quite easy to interpret and read. So that's been a big help for us.
Okay, thank you. Excellent. I'm just looking at our chat window, and I can't see anybody that's put their hands up. Well, I would, on that, and thank you very much, Matt. I would like to thank you very much again for your participation, and we look forward to continuing to work with yourself and Yarra Valley Water into the future, and working with FME. Thank you.
No worries, pleasure. Thank you very much.
Okay, our next session is I'm going to hand it over to our technical team. So I'd ask if Tom, Pri, Sam, Assis, and Simon could put your screens up, and just to introduce yourselves, and then to save on bandwidth, you can leave them up if you wish, or turn yourselves off. But here's the dynamic fivesome. So
look at this. You can see our video and our photo. It's like
that's it.
It's 10 of us here. But
there's
hello,
10
welcome. Thanks everyone for joining us
to
this afternoon or this morning, if it is where you're joining us from. Yeah, today we're just going to run you through a bit of the FME 2021 platform. So I'm going to stop sharing my video now as well. And yeah, we're going to share it amongst the team. So thanks everyone for joining us. Let's go forward a slide. Here we are. Okay. Yeah, so again, welcome everyone. I hope you're enjoying the fair, and thank you for being with us here today. Really what this presentation that myself and the team are going to give you is a bit of an introduction to the FME 2021 platform, a highlight of some of the functionality that is new in 2021, new features and formats and so on that we love to talk about. But also going to draw your attention to perhaps some features that you may have missed from previous years' releases that we want to share with you, because we think they're great and they're really useful to you. So let's start with connection to other formats and systems. So 2021 brings a suite of new and updated data formats and systems that we can easily integrate with. Let's explore some of these. So the first one that we're going to talk about today is Apache Parquet. It's a file format designed to support fast data processing for complex data. It's a text-based format, but it's different to how you would typically structure a CSV or other data that you'd commonly in the past store in a text file. The data in this format is stored in a column-based structure rather than a row-based structure that you'd see in a CSV file when you open it up in a text editor. So it's completely, opposite in a way to how you would typically structure text data. It's also self-describing. So there's metadata within a file or within the package of files that creates a Parquet file, explaining the schema and the structure of the data it contains, which means that it's more portable and helps with ingesting into a new system. And also passing to other people. If you have to share data with other people, always it can be sometimes a challenge to explain and describe the data structure. As a format, it's really optimized for performance and running queries on the data in this format, making it quicker and easier to get the relevant data back from this format. So thinking back to what we're covering here about connection to other systems, there's a new connector in the in FME, which is a type of transformer that you can use and get access to within FME Workbench. The CCAN connector, if you're unfamiliar with CCAN, it's a product for hosting open data on an open data portal. Many open data portals use CCAN, and this connector provides a way for you to easily get your data into CCAN and then publish it out to the world. So you can, once you get it in there, you can configure how you want it to be made available. You can describe it and you can present your data along with the metadata that you have. I'm now going to hand over to Sam, who's going to talk about messaging.
Thanks, Simon. I should have control. I'm requesting. So while we are talking about the ability to connect in 2021 with FME, I think it's important to talk about messaging quickly. The notion of sending and receiving messages between distributed systems, which has become so commonplace. There's such a commonplace practice in modern enterprise integration patterns, which is increasingly becoming a big selling point in FME, especially FME server. So messaging middleware is a popular choice as it provides a means of delivering information, invoking different systems, and tying many components together in a tightly integrated platform, theoretically, ideally. The beautiful thing is that, sorry, I've just noticed that we've gone down a slide. I apologize for that. Gets away from you when you're on the remote control like that. The beautiful thing is that each year, this is made easier with the FME platform, with the introduction of connectors that are targeted at connecting to existing message brokers to easily plug FME into your workflows, into your integration patterns. Basically, the entire selling point of FME is that it's easy to use, it's easy to get working. So the first new connector that I'm going to talk about is the RabbitMQ connector, which will allow you as users to connect to the RabbitMQ message broker via the AMQP protocol to send, receive, acknowledge, or count messages. This provides a drop and plug in approach natively within FME workbenches, just like you would with any other transformer, to configure a consumer and or publisher of messages for RabbitMQ, which is great. I've worked with AMQP in FME before these transformers, and done a bit with it after, and I love being able to just drop a transformer. And this one, it supports SSL TSL encryption, which for AMQP is AMQPS, when connecting to brokers, which is it's a common requirement. And ultimately, what this will do for you is it supports new data streaming workflows with no need to set up a custom AMQP client, which is, I don't know if anyone else has done much with AMQP clients. It's personally not my favorite thing to set up. The next connector to discuss, I'm checking the slides now very carefully because I let that get away from me. The next connector to discuss is the Azure Event Hubs connector, which is again a native drop and plug-in means of publishing or receiving messages asynchronously on the Azure Event Hub service. This new transformer connects to the Azure Events Hub through the Kafka protocol using the Azure Event Hub's SDK and supports publishing, receiving, and checkpointing messages, which in the context of Azure Hub, I think it's also known as an event as per Azure's documentation, which as the name suggests, but I'm personally stubborn and I like to use the broad spectrum term messages. These two new transformers join the ranks of other transformers introduced in recent years, such as the Kafka connector or the MQTT connector, to name a couple, to allow you to easily integrate with newer existing message patterns. And additionally, it's probably worth mentioning that FME Desktop and FME Server are extensible, and they do support being configured as listeners, consumers, publishers, etc., what have you, by making the required libraries available to the FME installation and configuring a JNDI properties file or something equivalent, you still have the ability to also to customize or configure more custom clients within the FME environment. You're not bound to these transformers, but these transformers are very nice and they make things very easy, and I highly recommend them. All right, I'm going to give it back to you, Simon.
Thanks, Sam. So now moving along, every year we see some great improvements to the support for Esri within FME, and 2021 is no different. So if you're an Esri user and you've made the switch to Pro from ArcMap, you'll know that geodatabase annotations have changed. In earlier versions of FME, these couldn't be accessed. SAFE has now extended the support for reading and writing to both file and enterprise geodatabase annotations. And City Engine users can now utilize FME to pre-process and prepare data for inclusion within a City Engine model. And this really, I guess, extends upon the capabilities of City Engine, because you can scenario build and develop different alternatives to your City Engine models by using FME to prepare and cut your data different ways, and then generate the models all from within FME. And SAFE have updated existing readers and writers to support the WFS Web Feature Service version 3 in FME 2021. Other formats that have now been either, or I guess these ones are new formats, is the WMTS Web Map Tile Services. So you can now access those from within FME. And really the exciting one here is the API features, which is a interesting new standard for creating web APIs that provide access to features as in, spatial features via HTTP calls. It is still a work in progress, and this is version 1.0, which really is about accessing existing features via a HTTP call. And it's still a bit of a moving standard for future releases, which being OGC, anyone can get involved in and provide their input or opinion as to how it should be implemented for the future, which will include the ability to edit, manipulate, delete features via this API features standard. So now we're going to move to the transform section, and we're going to start to talk about some of the new or improved functionality that we're going to see in FME 2021. So really building workspaces and workflows with FME, that's really, I guess, the fundamental part of what SAFE's trying to give us the best experience with. And transformers are really the building blocks for building our transformations that we use to either get access to data, integrate things, or manipulate data. So with that, we're going to hand over to Tom.
Hi, everybody. So, first thing I'm going to talk about today is the concept of data-aware transformer dialogues. So with the introduction of all of the feature caching capabilities that have come in over the last few years now, since about 2018, we've been getting more and more functionality to do with the actual data values into our FME workspace. So prior to that, we had we knew things about this information about the schema, but we weren't aware, or FME wasn't aware rather, of the actual data values until we actually ran the workspace with the data. Now we have the caches. This data is now available to us, so we don't have to now try to remember
those values when we're setting up tests and so on. So in places like the test filter, we have access to those attribute values. And when we go into the dialog, when we click on that drop down there, we can actually access those values in there. And or if we just start typing, FME will start to suggest those. It's now also available in 2021 with the attribute manager, and I believe it's being rolled out to a few other transformers in the coming releases. So that's a really useful thing to help with our development side of things. Let's see if we can get in, change the slide, maybe. Oh, it's decided to run something for me. That's good. Oh, there we go. So the next thing I wanted to talk about today was the parameter dialog builder. So this is all around our user parameters in FME. Up until 2021, we had individual parameters in the navigator window, and we could build each of those, set the type, configure it how we wanted it, and so on. That's now been replaced by this parameter builder or parameter manager type of dialog. So we just right click on the user parameters in the navigator again, just as we did before. And this now opens up this dialog, as we can see here in this little video, and allows us to have a more of a drag and drop type of creation for our parameters. So we can start to produce rich dialogues that look much more like the FME created dialogues when we're building our custom transformers, workspaces, or any server apps that we might be trying to use. We do have the same amount of types that we used to have, but that list has been condensed. So where we pick up a number one, for example, we will pick in the configuration for that, we will then select what type of number we're wanting to be bringing in. All of the various text ones, for example, have also been condensed down to just a single text. Sorry, a single text type. And then in the configuration, we can choose whether it's just going to be single line or multi-line, and so on. There's a couple of new parameter types as well. There's a simple yes/no checkbox type of example here. There's also a message type as well, so we can start to just add in a title to our parameter dialogues. So we just create a parameter with a title. We just put text in. There's no user interface, but it can be there to help explain what these parameters are there about. And most of the parameter types that we've got there have some improved controls, so we can be much more specific in what we're asking the end user. Oop. Just go back again. Yep. So we can also group our data. Group our parameters together. So we've probably seen in some of the transformer dialogues in the regular transformers, you get groups of parameters together that then can be collapsed. And we can now do the same with our user parameters. So if there's a set of parameters that are all linked effectively, they all belong to the same type of operation, it may be not useful. Sorry, it may be useful to group them together so that if they need to, the user needs to expand that and fill it in, they can do. If not, it can just be kept hidden out of sight to just give you a cleaner interface. And we can see that action in here. I've created a little parameter group here with just 2 parameters in it, including a date parameter and a yes, no. And we can also configure how it appears initially to the end user. So is it going to be collapsible or not? And if it is collapsible, how do we want it to be initially presented? Should it start open or should it be collapsed? And so on. The configuration of these things pretty similar to how it was. It's just an expanded set now. So in terms of the dialogue's a little bit more, a little larger, because we've got to include all the type and the configuration all in the one window. So here I'm configuring a number parameter here, enter the data. We can decide whether it's going to be published or not, whether it's required or optional, as it used to be called, and whether we want the end user to assign an attribute to it or not. Standard sort of configuration in there. And then we just specify the precision. So are we going to accept integers or floats? And if we select custom value, then we can specify a specific number of decimal places in there. With the file name stroke URL configuration, we can choose whether we're going to look for a file or a folder or a URL. We can decide whether we're going to have read or write access in here. We can also filter what's the end users can be looking for in there in the browser there. So if we were looking just for shapefiles, we could put a .shp filter in there, and then when it's browsing through, the user's browsing through, they'll only be offered shapefiles from that selection. And I think that's it for me. So thank you very much. I think we'll be handing back to Simon.
Thanks, Tom. We're actually now handing over to Assis, who's going to talk about the PROJ transformer in 2021. Over to you, Assis.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, we saw quite a few new connections that can be made in FME 2021, and there were quite a few new parameters, or like how to set up the parameters in new in FME 2021. So right now I'm going to talk about PROJ transformers. Just a minute, I think I skipped a slide. Sorry about that. Can't seem to go to the first slide. Ah, yes. Okay. So with FME 2020, we saw the introduction of PROJ family of transformers, which were PROJ reprojector and the PROJ attribute reprojector. With FME 2021, it delivers the latest version of PROJ. So it supports the latest version of PROJ fully. With the PROJ transformers, you can leverage more coordinate systems by connecting to the PROJ reprojection library. In FME 2021, you don't have to install the grid shifts for the whole world. The grid shifts are centrally located, and when you run the workspace which utilizes PROJ transformers, the workspace will automatically connect to the centrally located grid shifts and will download and run automatically in your workspace. So that is a new feature in FME 2021 that allows remote access to grids. So just moving to the next slide. Yep. So for everyone who is not familiar with PROJ, so I like to describe a little bit about what is PROJ. PROJ is an open source coordinate conversion library, and it is also thought as the future for open source side of coordinate conversion. It includes cartographic projections as well as geodetic transformations, and it has got support for hundreds of different map projections as well. And so it is a reprojection library similar to the FME's CS map. The one FME uses is CS map. So when do you want to use a PROJ transformer as compared to the normal transformers which FME provides? So you want to use the PROJ transformer when reprojecting features using the PROJ library is explicitly desired for your project. You can describe your own custom CRS in your PROJ library, PROJ transformers as well, which I'll get to back later on. Or you can use the PROJ transformers to utilize the coordinate systems which are not available on the normal reprojector or the FME's reprojector, and which are available on the PROJ transformers. So moving on to the next slide. Yep. So PROJ transformers can reproject raster, vector, or point cloud data. It has got two modes, the automatic transformation and manual transformation mode, transformation type, let's say. The automatic transformation automatically detects the source coordinate system. And you also have the option to choose from a list of available PROJ supported coordinate systems. So in the image on the right, you can see the coordinate system has been chosen, ITRF94, and a destination coordinate system is the ITRF 2014. ITRF 94 2014 are the coordinate systems which are available in PROJ library, but they aren't available in the FME CS map projection. So these are coordinate systems which you can use in the PROJ transformers. So apart from having the official coordinate systems which are in the PROJ library, you can even define your own coordinate system manually. So using a manual transformation, so the manual transformation is by using a manual description of the coordinate reference system in WKT, WKT2, or the PROJ strings. In the example here on the right, you can see how a EPSG 4326 or WGS84 is defined in WKT1 or WKT2. So this is the definition in well-known text format, and this is the definition for the same coordinate system in PROJ string format. So if you can describe your coordinate reference system in either of the WKT1, WKT2, or the PROJ string, there is a very good chance that PROJ will make sense of it, and you can utilize it as well in this PROJ transformer. So a very important feature of the PROJ transformer is that you can even create a PROJ pipeline. So a PROJ pipeline is a PROJ string where you can build compound transformations. So if it has got multi-step transformation, then you can all lump it together in one PROJ pipeline. So in the pipeline, each step depends on the output of immediately preceding step. For example, for a Helmholtz transformation, which uses the Cartesian coordinate system, which coordinates, and you have a geodetic file, then you can create a PROJ pipeline, which will convert geodetic to Cartesian, and then do the Helmholtz transformation. And then finally, you can convert it back to the geodetic system. For example, in the right image, you can see a pipeline that's defined the Helmut conversion. And so this kind of multiple stage transformation can be set up or built in the PROJ pipeline as well. And this can be used in the PROJ transformer in FME. Yep, with that, I'd like to hand it back to Simon.
Thank you, Assis, and thanks, Tom, prior to that. So moving along, each year we see a large uplift in the performance as safe rebuild transformers, or in other cases, give them the ability to use bulk mode processing. And what this leaves us with as users is a faster processing time, or faster time for FME to run a particular process or job. Last year, we saw a huge improvement in the statistics calculator. And this year, the largest and a lot of the improvement we're seeing as well relates to transformers and working with geometry. So spatial filter there, primarily a transformer that's concerned about geometry, but there's also a range of other transformers which you can see there, which have had sizable improvements, which is great to see. So I'm just going to push the slide along. There we go. So we're now going to get into the section talking about automation. So we've gone ahead, we've built a particular workbench or workspace. Now we want to automate it and integrate it with our other systems. So using FME server, one of the things that we're always going to be concerned about is how we can get the most from our FME server deployment and to be efficient in our utilization. So to help you do that, FME server has a range of metrics that are made available to us to help us to understand exactly what's happening under the hood with the FME server deployment. So in 2021, there's additional metrics which have been made available, which really help as a user or even as an administrator to understand what's happening with your FME server. So getting some additional job runtime metrics, which you can see listed there, as well as some additional ones around the actual hardware that the server is running on and how that's being utilized. So all these are helpful to just, I guess, initially understand what's happening with your FME server, but also then to help you better manage and refine your configuration to get the most out of your deployment. And effectively, at the end of the day, minimize the amount of time that your jobs are spent either running or queued up waiting to run. So this then feeds into the next section, which is around helping to manage and better control your queues. So in the past, FME server job queues have been fairly static and rigid with little flexibility, at least through the user interface, without using the REST API to dynamically so that you can better prioritize jobs or reserve engines for specific tasks. From the previous slide, the additional metrics shown can be used to configure engine queues. And what's being shown here is an example of using the actual hardware stats of the FME server to help set up and manage a job routing queue, which is effectively going to determine how your jobs are queued up. So another improvement we're seeing in 2021 is in relation to automations. So automations, if you haven't seen them, are a very quick and easy way that you can begin to integrate your workbench with other things within your organization. So by other things, I mean other systems or other data that may be moving or static within your organization that you're using FME to really easily get access to. So automations provide a trigger, which is a way of actually invoking a workbench or another action to occur, and then gives you a way of then chaining together either several workbenches or using the FME automations writer to actually have some logic in the automation to determine if this particular job has had this result, this is what we do next. So with automations, they can sometimes, if they do get a bit complex, be a bit tricky to debug and test. And what the improvement here is for 2021 is that you can now add a manual trigger into your automation, which is useful because it will mock or replicate your real trigger. So what we're seeing here is a directory watch trigger. So what happens is if a file either lands in a directory or is modified or is removed from a directory watching, we can then trigger, in this case, a message to be filtered and then potentially a workspace to be run. So this one here, in the past, if we wanted to test this, we'd actually have to go and put some data in that directory, which, depending on your system and the way it's set up within your organization, that may not be something that you're able to do due to other systems perhaps watching that directory. So what we can do is put in a manual trigger and then utilize that to sub in, for example, a different path, and then say that we've put a file at this path, trigger the automation to run and test it to actually confirm that it works. So the ability here is this one here, this trigger is at the start of an automation. What we can do as well is actually drop that manual trigger in further down the automation stream to invoke perhaps a workspace towards the end to test that that works. So another change we're seeing with automations in 2021 is the concept of automated retries or guaranteed delivery in another language. What this means is that we can actually configure within an automation for a workspace or an external action to retry if it is unsuccessful in what it's trying to do. So for example, if it's a workspace that we're running and it doesn't quite finish for either an internal FME issue or an external system that's using not performing as expected, we can set up that workspace to retry and rerun again. So what this does is it actually sets up a job to be resubmitted with a new job ID and reruns it. Based on the configuration here, we can see it provides you the ability to set the number of reattempts and how long to wait between reattempts and how much to add between successive reattempts. But really what this is for is when you're dealing with external systems such as web services, REST APIs, or other unreliable, perhaps overloaded systems. And it really gives you the ability to set up a particular automation that you have more control over what to do if it doesn't work the first time around. So another improvement we're seeing with FME Server over the last little while is further integration of different authentication systems and authentication methods. So nearly 10 years ago was when Active Directory, the connection to Active Directory was first on the scene, which meant that we could manage our FME server users within our Active Directory. In 2021, we've now seen the ability to connect to a generic directory, which might be just a generic LDAP or a generic other type of Active Directory, which we can then use to manage our users within. In 2021.1, which we're expecting to see around July, August time, we're expecting to see the ability to connect into Azure Active Directory, which we're seeing as more and more common method that organizations are using to manage their user access within. And then at this point in time, next year's release 2022, we're expecting to see SAML, which is another type of authentication method, be made available for use within FME Server. So I'm now going to hand over to Pri, who's going to give us a bit of a rundown on FME Server web apps. Over to you, Pri.
Thank you, Simon. Good afternoon or good morning, everybody, depending on your time zone. I thought it would be useful to talk about FME Server Web Apps today. Even though it's not an entirely new feature in FME 2021, Web Apps in FME Server has gone through significant enhancements since its first release with FME 2019.1. Web Apps allows users to run a workspace without needing login access to FME Server. Users can simply follow the link to web app and submit requests to run the process in FME Server. The screenshot at the right top of the slide, just below the FME Lizard, shows how web app menu appears in FME Server 2021. Using the menu, you can create workspace apps and manage them. Also, it is possible to create and manage gallery apps through the same menu. Gallery apps act as landing pages for collection of workspace apps, and it was introduced in FME 2020.1. The screenshot at the bottom right of the slide a gallery app with 3 workspace apps linked with it is shown here. So you can see 3 workspace apps there in this gallery app. Moving to next slide. It's a little bit slow, it's waiting. Yep. Creating a new workspace app is simple and can be achieved with a few clicks on the web form provided through the FME Server Web UI. You can enter a new name for your workspace app, select the repository where the FME workspace is located, and select the workspace that need to be run through the app. It is possible to set expiration for app link and enable authentication as well. It is important to notice that regardless of user authentication setting, web app creates its own authentication token with the expiration setting to authenticate run workspace and access required resources such as web connections and database connections used in the workspace. This is a clever way of providing required permission for web app to run per process in FME Server, regardless of the user who authenticates the app itself. And however, sometimes this causes issues in accessing resources. We will look into more details later. Apart from basic settings, it is possible to customize the workspace app. So you can see in the next slide, a little bit slow. Yeah. Just to make sure not to click twice to go into the next slide. So apart from basic settings, as I mentioned, it is possible to customize the workspace app further by setting title, background color, heading image, icon, etc. that you can see. So here in the right screenshot at the right side of the slide. This helps you to build attractive user interface for web apps. To summarize the process of building web apps, that's in the next slide, just very slow. Let's give some time, yeah. The same as any other process in FME Server, it starts with authoring or building required workspace or workspaces in FME Desktop. And then the workspace should be published into FME Server and create workspace app using FME Server Web UI as we discussed in previous slides. Once you can create the web workspace apps here. So once you create workspace apps, it is possible to group them and create gallery apps if required. When you're building workspace apps, it is possible to enable required authentication, so users will be prompted to enter credentials before loading the app interface to run it. So when you enable authentication, it allows you to select user roles actually. So therefore, all users in the roles you selected will be able to run the app. For example, if you select admin and marketing roles here in this slide, so then users that linked with this purple color arrows and then these orange color arrows will be able to run this app but the users like, users that linked with the role tech can't run this process. But if any user is linked with marketing and tech both, then he or she will be able to run that app. So, however, as I mentioned at the beginning, web app uses its own token for authenticating the process and resources. Therefore, it is necessary to provide required permission for that token. To manage token permission, it's very easy. You can click on the user icon at top right corner of FME Server Web UI. So in the next slide, you should be able to see a screenshot. Yep, here at the top right corner of the FME Server Web UI, you will get the user icon. Once you click the user icon, you can access the manage token. Just click on manage token. Then it loads this page where you can see API tokens tab. Within API tokens tab, you can see all the tokens listed that you have created for apps. If you, by clicking on any of this link, just let's say workspace app test, second one, if you click on that link, it will load a web form that you can edit all these permissions. In the next slide, you can see a form. Yep, here. So this web form, this is very similar to user and roles permission web form. So you can just simply click this down arrow under the connections and select whichever the connection and give access, required access to that token. So that's it on the web apps. So hope this helps you to start with web apps. And as I mentioned at the beginning, more features are adding into web apps in each new release of FME Server to enhance the capabilities. So thank you for joining with us today, and over to you, Sam.
Thanks, Pri. That was great. I guess one feature we haven't touched on there that has been a really big win, in my opinion, with web apps in the last release in 2020 was the ability to have a geometry parameter, which then enables you to give users the access to not only put in some text-based parameters or upload a file, but actually draw a bit of geometry, whether it's a bounding box for a clip and ship job, or whether to actually, highlight a feature on a map using the web map interface. So, Andre, have we had any questions come through?
Certainly have, Simon. Thank you very much. Thank you, team, for putting that together. We have got a couple of questions that have come through the presentation. One of them here is, do FME Server web apps users need to know how to use FME to make use of these? Question that came through from Angela.
No, I'll take that question actually. No, the web app users actually, it's not required to use, to know how to use FME Server or FME Desktop itself, because that's been done, by FME developer. So the workspace been developed by somebody who knows FME and then published to FME Server and configured the web app. It just simply, if you have the web URL for that web app, you can use a web browser, could be Google Chrome, Internet Explorer or anything, and then just log into that web app and run it. If it has authentication and the authentication is provided to you, then you can just simply enter credentials that will allow you to run the web app.
Excellent, thank you. Probably on a similar line, another question's come through. Can the FME Server apps enable data to be uploaded?
Yeah, so it's possible, because the data upload, and you can run actually basic processes like data, the download service and job submitter service. So through those services, you can upload required data as you required. Yeah.
Thank you. Got a couple more questions here. this one's for Sam. It was mentioned that custom messaging clients would be used with FME. What would, hang on, I'm just trying to read this question. What would be the benefit of doing so? So you want me to read that again through to you, Sam, or you?
No, I think I understand the question. It's basically asking. I mentioned extensibility outside of the new connectors, and I think that's what it's talking about. So, well, the second part of it was what would be the benefit of it? Was it, Andre?
Yeah, so it was mentioned that custom messaging clients would be used with FME. What would be the benefit of doing so?
Okay, so it's not that they would be used, it's that you have the option to, there's the extensibility in place that you can use them. From my experience, working with messaging and FME, it really depends on your use case and what environment you're working in, what your needs are. Because don't get me wrong, these connectors are fantastic for being able to drop and play. Much easier approach to setting up a client, but I can use examples here where I've had requirements where we've actually had to set up a listener, and ideally what this listener does is it invokes a workflow and automation in response to receiving a message. Having the connector, which requires a workbench, wasn't necessarily going to work in this case. So what we did was that we set up the Artemis libraries, the Apache Artemis libraries, to work with it. Configured a custom JNDI for this, and then had the JMS trigger working in the automation. Basically, this is pointing to a custom file that said, look out for these topics, these queues, and would then trigger our workflow in response to that. As far as efficiency around not consuming engines where you don't need to in an FME server deployment, that was my preferred solution, is that this way I could configure it at a top level instead of having it in the workbench and require the engine to be running. It's really a use by use case. This is really just one of the arguments for using it outside the connectors. The bottom line is that the connectors serve their own purpose, and that purpose is great and it's easy to set up. That's their biggest argument, is it's a packaged solution that's easy just to drop in. And in the meantime, for the minority of people who aren't satisfied with that, FME is still extensible. Cater to the majority, but allow the minority to continue to tweak and improve as well. It's a good approach.
Thank you. Another question here. I think this one's for you, Tom. How do I access the updated transformers with increased performance?
Okay, yeah, I'll take that one. So basically, once you have FME 2021 installed, you open up your workspace. In there, any new transformers you put in will be the new definitions. An old workspace, you can upgrade the transformers in place, just right-clicking on the transformer. There'll be an option in that context menu there for upgrade transformer. You can just step through the wizard for that and see what the changes are and so on. There's also going to be a section in the navigator labeled upgradable transformers, I think it is. And you can basically just work through the list in there. The only caveat really is that you should be cautious about doing your upgrades, just in case some functionality has changed and your workspace then doesn't behave as you'd expect it to. And also you have to do each of the transformers individually. You can't just say, upgrade all my attribute managers, for example.
Excellent.
Hopefully that answers that.
Thank you, Tom.
No problem.
And it looks like I have got one more question here. It's probably a question I've got more of a question about was for assist with regard to the PROJ transformations. You mentioned about the fact that you can go from the grid coordinates to lats long or to Cartesian and then back again. Can you give I'm kind of thinking of where people need to transform from a datum and they can't do a straight transformation datum, so they transform from their coordinate system to their lats and longs, and then from that they transform, and that becomes an automated process. Is that what is envisaged? So you go, for example, from AMG 66 to lats and longs, and then being able to transform it to GDA 2020, for example, and having that as an automated process. Is that what that would do for a person?
Yes, that can be done. So with a pipeline, it's like, yeah, you can join multiple transformations in one statement, which is a feature of PROJ library itself. So you can do those kind of transformation, multiple transformations, or you can even lump it with a transformation like Helmer transformation in between. Yeah, it's like joining multiple transformations into one one transformation, I'd say.
Yeah.
Does
Okay.
that answer your question?
It certainly does. Okay. Yeah. And I am conscious of time. We have run over time, but we've got like another question here. It hasn't been discussed, but has there been any development into Microsoft SharePoint for shared files where you don't have access to the site? I'm not sure who would. Simon, would you like to answer that one?
Sure, I can attempt to answer that one. I haven't seen any changes in the last few years with in terms of connectors into SharePoint of late. Really, the only one that I'm familiar with is the list reader and writer, which if you've got a list in SharePoint of tasks or other things that you can get access to and manipulate those. But I will throw it out to the others from the team here if they're online and they do know some more. Even the safers on the call on the Zoom as well, if they want to drop in some details that we're not aware of. There are a few safers on the line, but they're all silent.
Put your hand up and I can unmute you if you are in a position to answer.
Yeah, I've not heard anything, Simon. Just listing, as I understand it.
Sorry to the question, person who's asked that question, but we can try and dig out some more information and see if there is anything coming or anything that we're not aware of that may already be out there that gives you the ability to get to files or to put files in SharePoint.
We'll get back to you, Libby, on that one if you are okay with that. If we can get some more information for you. Okay. I can't see any more questions coming through and nobody's putting their hand up. So thank you, team. Thank you very much for a very informative session. And I'm sure if you have any other questions, you may not be thinking of them now, but after you've had a bit of a mull over on what has been presented, if you have any questions, please send it through to info@1spatial.com. and we'll ensure that we get in contact with you to provide the answers for you. I'll now take this opportunity to just highlight some of the things that we as 1Spatial Australia are able to provide to people. Our FME, we have a skilled certified staff with FME desktop, server accreditation and accredited certified trainers for FME. We've been selling and supporting and training FME since 2004 in Australia. Corporately, 1Spatial has been involved with safe software since about the 1999 era. We are the premier FME Platinum partner for Australia with a dedicated team of people there to support you for desktop, server and FME in the cloud, as we are an MSP, one of 3 in the world for FME, which is a managed support provider or service provider for FME Cloud. FME services that we provide the ability for us to facilitate product evaluation. As we mentioned, we are an organization, while we are very much tied to FME, it doesn't mean that we won't go in and ascertain the best needs for you and provide you a recommendation for that. We do provide FME consultancy services, so we can come in and assist you in developing an application for your needs, getting a statement of works and doing the development for you, etc. We do public and bespoke training services, so we can provide you for public training on our website, on the 1Spatial website. We have a published schedule of when we do the public training, and we can also do on-site and at our training facilities custom training for your needs. Our technical support team available on support@1spatial.com, or call out 1300 290 686 to get in contact with our support team directly. As I mentioned, with our FME training, we provide desktop basic, we provide desktop advanced and server authoring for face-to-face and at our training, at our 1Spatial training facilities. And as I mentioned, if you want to know the timetable, visit our website. We do formal and custom training at the 1Spatial training facilities, or we can do it on your premise. Again, contact us at sales.australia@1spatial.com, or call us on 1300 290 686 to talk to our sales team to arrange for this training when it suits you. We will be running a webinar in June, which will be basically taking the hot features that have been released and talked about from this World Fair and giving a short synopsis of the best things that came out of it. We'll also be doing a GDA 2020. We did one last year, late last year, and that was very successful. And we're going to now continue on that series with the next step. We'll also be looking to do some more speed dating with Don in July. If you are interested in catching up with Don Murray, one of the co-founders of SAFE and president, where you can talk to him one-on-one on any topic that you may want to talk about, so long as it is FME, naturally enough. And we do run these a couple times a year. If you are interested, you need to get in contact with us to book yourself in. As you can imagine, these are in high demand. FME Server Month. From our FME Server webinar that we did last year, we realized that there was a lot of information. So what we're going to do this year is in August, each week, we're going to have a 2-hour webinar going through a new or some feature of FME Server. So again, keep an eye out for that, and we'll be advertising that. We'll also be doing in October and November webinars on our One Data Gateway and One Integrate, and also looking in November for another speed dating with Don. We will be attending live events. So we'll be running breakfast series in September, where we're envisage going to have breakfast at each major capital city around Australia, where you'll be able to talk with the team from 1Spatial on anything that we provide. We will be attending the Spatial Information Day conference in South Australia in September, which is highly successful. We'll be attending the SSI New South Wales ACT Regional Conference in October. We'll be at Sydney Build in November, and at the SSI Victorian Surveying and Spatial Summit in November. I'd like to take this opportunity to also mention it's the end of financial year. If you aren't already being inundated, you will start to be, and this is the start of it. I apologize, not really. I'd like you to take a look at this and have a look at the 5 reasons for contacting 1Spatial to maximize your end of financial year savings. get the latest version of FME 2021 and receive 12 months free maintenance and support. Have an old license of FME, update it to the latest, and you can get all of the latest features of FME 2021 with such features as faster transformer speed, increased automation control, new formats and system support, and as well as all of the features that the team had talked about this afternoon. Engage 1Spatial for your consultancy work now and receive a 10% discount. I say that not to be disappointed. As you can imagine, having to get something done now, we've only got basically the rest of this month and June to get any consultancy work that you need done before the end of financial year. Purchase 1Spatial's One Data Gateway or One Integrate products and receive 15% off the net recommended retail price. And the fifth reason to get in contact, purchase 1Spatial's FME training and receive a 10% off the list price. You can use the training at any time over the next 12 months. So what you can do is purchase your training, get it at a 10% discount now before the end of financial year, and keep it in the bank for later in the year. Offers are open until 30th of June, so hurry to maximize your savings. For those of you that did attend on Friday, you will know now that we are running a series. We are doing one tomorrow and we're doing one on Thursday, where we'll be making the Ferris wheel go round with 1Spatial on tomorrow and where your data dreams come true on Thursday, where we'll be hearing from the Tweed Shire Council, from Cherie Scott. We'll be hearing from Anthony Drager from DELP and Christina Ramos from Parks Victoria. And on Thursday, Jonathan Stanger will give us a run through on some magic tricks on taming wild external systems. And we'll also be hearing from Barrett Higman from, I've forgotten the Victorian Plantations, Hancock Victorian Plantations, making data, using data to drive decisions with FME. And there will also be your last chance to have a Q&A with Safe Software themselves and our 1Spatial technical team. On that note, I'd like to thank you all very much for participating in our webinar, and we look forward to catching up with you next time. Thank you very much.